Hello, I am Robert Louis Stevenson. Born in Edinburgh in 1850, I spent much of my short life battling illness. And yet, it was precisely that fragility that drove me toward adventure, at least on the page. In 1883, I published a story that began as a simple sketch drawn for my stepson Lloyd. A treasure map, a boy, a one-legged sailor with a smile that could charm the devil himself. What started as a game became something I never expected, a tale that would outlast me by more than a century. Treasure Island is not merely a pirate story. It is a story about greed, courage, betrayal, and the dangerous allure of fortune. It is, I believe, as relevant today as it was the day I wrote it, perhaps even more so. Let's begin. I was never content to simply entertain. My journeys from the windswept coasts of Scotland to the warm shores of Samoa taught me something essential about human nature. We are creatures of contradiction. We desire safety, yet we crave the wild unknown. We preach virtue, yet we are endlessly seduced by greed. I wrote once that to know what you prefer, instead of humbly saying amen to what the world tells you to prefer, is to have kept your soul alive. That is the heart of everything I wrote. My characters, Jim Hawkins, Long John Silver, Dr. Livesey, they are not simply heroes and villains. They are mirrors. And if you look into them honestly, you will see yourself reflected back. The question is whether you have the courage to look. Everything begins at the Admiral Benbow Inn. A quiet place. A modest place. My young narrator Jim Hawkins lives there with his parents, tending to guests and asking for little more than an ordinary life. And then Captain Billy Bones arrives. He staggers through the door, this great weathered wreck of a man, with a sea chest full of secrets, and eyes that scan every face for enemies. He sings his dreadful song, he drinks his rum, and he whispers those fateful words, "You have till 10 tonight." With those words, Jim's ordinary life ends. The chaos of the high seas has come to his quiet door. I want you to think about that moment, because chaos rarely announces itself grandly. It arrives as Billy Bones did, wrapped in the coat of an ordinary stranger. Inside Billy Bones' sea chest, Jim discovers a map. And what a map it is! Spyglass Hill, Skeleton Island, an X drawn in red, marking the spot where Captain Flint buried his treasure. £700,000 in gold. Now I ask you, what does a map do to a person? It transforms them. Jim, a boy of no particular status, suddenly holds the key to unimaginable wealth. Dr. Livesey, a man of reason and medicine, becomes an investor. Squire Trelawney, a gentleman of leisure, becomes an expedition financier, chartering the Hispaniola for £4,500. The map does not discriminate. It infects the rich and the poor, alike with the same fever. And that fever has a name. We call it greed. The map promises everything. What it costs, that is another matter entirely. Here is where the story grows truly dangerous. Long John Silver is, on the surface, the ship's cook. He is cheerful, capable, and extraordinarily likeable. Jim admires him. Even I, as I wrote to him, found myself admiring him. But one evening, Jim hides inside an apple barrel, and what he overhears changes everything. Silver is the mastermind of a mutiny. He has recruited the crew. He has a plan, and his plan involves violence. This is the key concept I want you to hold on to. Charisma masks treachery. The most dangerous people are not those who look dangerous. They are those who smile the brightest while planning the most. The crew of the Hispaniola is not what they seem. They have signed a contract, and they intend to break it by force. When the Hispaniola reaches the island, the fantasy of the map collides with the brutal reality of survival. Men die. The stockade is besieged. Jim takes extraordinary risks, stealing the ship, confronting pirates alone, navigating by courage rather than experience. And what does he find when the treasure is finally located? The cache has already been emptied by Ben Gunn, a marooned sailor who spent 3 years on the island alone. The gold is gone from the spot marked on the map. The fight for gold becomes a fight for life itself. Not everyone leaves the island. This is the physical cost of greed. And I did not spare the reader from it. I wanted them to feel it. Because dreams of easy fortune always carry a hidden bill, and someone always pays it in blood. Now I must ask you to step back from the story itself and consider the world in which I wrote it. The year was 1883. The British Empire stretched across the globe. Pink territories on every map. Canada, India, Australia, vast territories in Africa. The sun, they said, never set on the British Empire. Exploration was the great romance of my age. But I knew, and I wrote it into my novel, between the lines, that exploration was rarely innocent. It was an exercise in power, in dominion, and in resource acquisition. When Trelawney outfits a ship and sails to claim buried treasure on a foreign island, he is enacting, in miniature, the very logic of empire. The fictional voyage of the Hispaniola mirrors the aggressive expansionism of Victorian Britain, adventure dressed in the clothes of heroism. My England was also an England of smoke and industry. The factories were roaring, the cities were swelling, and the gap between those who owned the machines and those who operated them grew wider by the year. Massive wealth creation for the few, squalor for the many. I want you to understand why the pirates in my novel villains are not simple. For men like the Hispaniola's crew, working class, desperate, with few legitimate paths to prosperity. Piracy was a rational choice. A brutal one, yes. A criminal one, certainly. But comprehensible. Piracy was not just crime. It was a desperate leap across the widening chasm between the working class and the aristocracy. When you understand that, Long John Silver becomes something more complex than a monster. He becomes a symptom of a broken system. Victorian society was a world defined by rigid boundaries. You were born into your station, and society expected you to stay there. Jim Hawkins begins as a humble innkeeper's son, essentially as a servant class boy, essentially. Dr. Livesey is a gentleman of medicine. Squire Trelawney is landed aristocracy. These three men should never have been equals. And yet the adventure forces them into something approaching equality, because survival does not negotiate with class. Jim's journey is a transgression of class lines. He moves from servant to saviour. He outwits pirates, captures the ship, and turns the tide of the entire expedition. The chaos of the island is, I would argue, the only place in that rigid society where true meritocracy exists. Not birth, not wealth. Only courage, intelligence, and will. Let me speak plainly about gold. It is the engine of my entire novel, and I believe it deserves our full attention. Greed is not a disease of the poor. Look at Squire Trelawney, an educated, privileged man of standing, and watch how quickly he abandons caution the moment that map appears. The treasure promises freedom. It promises power. It promises the solution to every problem, and that promise enslaves every character who believes it to their basest instincts. Trelawney boasts carelessly and compromises the expedition's secrecy. Silver murders without hesitation. Even the loyalists are not immune. They fight as much for the gold as for principle. The treasure promises freedom, but the pursuit of it chains every soul who chases it. That is the paradox I wished my readers to sit with. It is one they should still be sitting with today. I confess, Long John Silver was my favourite creation. And that should trouble you. He is a murderer. He is a manipulator. He abandons his crew when it suits him and switches loyalties like a man changing coats. And yet, he is the most compelling father figure Jim Hawkins has ever encountered. He teaches Jim. He protects Jim. He saves Jim's life. I challenged myself, and I challenge you now. Can a bad man have genuinely redeeming qualities? Can good men be blinded by hubris and self-righteousness? Dr. Livesey is noble, but also cold. Trelawney is generous, but also reckless and vain. Silver is treacherous, but also wise. I refuse to draw a clean line between hero and villain, because I knew, from my own life, that no such line truly exists in human nature. Jim Hawkins is, at his core, a coming-of-age story. A Bildungsroman, the scholars call it. A novel of education and growth. Jim begins as a boy with a broom. He ends as a young man with a pistol, and a story that will shape the rest of his life. But look carefully at what the journey costs him. He witnesses violence. He kills a man. He is betrayed by someone he trusted and admired. He returns home not just richer in gold, but older in spirit, with scars that money cannot heal. He returns home not just richer, but older in spirit. The adventure leaves a mark that gold cannot fix. That is the great truth of growing up, is it? Experience is irreversible. Once you have seen the world for what it truly is, you cannot unsee it. Jim Hawkins could not go back. Neither can any of us. Treasure Island is not merely a geographical location. It is a laboratory, when the laws of England are thousands of miles away, when there is no court, no magistrate, no social contract to enforce. What remains? Human nature stripped bare. The island divides into loyalists and mutineers, each controlling strategic territories. The stockade, the North Inlet, the swamp. They negotiate, threaten, attack, and defend. It is in miniature a complete society, or rather, a society in collapse. The island reveals the fragility of social order. It is a vacuum where power belongs to the ruthless. I find it remarkable that this dynamic, the breakdown of institutional order, the emergence of raw power struggles, is one that political philosophers have theorized about for centuries. I simply dramatized it and set it on a very beautiful island. Now I want to speak directly to your world, the world of 2026. I wrote about pirates who exploited the trust of a ship's crew. Different tools, same motive. Your world has its own pirates. They do not carry cutlasses. They carry code, just as Long John Silver exploited the Hispaniola from within, a trusted insider, a smiling cook. Your modern hackers exploit digital vulnerabilities from inside the networks of companies and governments. The open sea has become the open web. The treasure is no longer buried gold. It is data, passwords, financial systems, personal information. And the tactics, remarkably familiar. Build trust. Smile often. Strike when no one is watching. I did not predict the internet, but I understood human predation. And predation, I'm afraid, is timeless. Here is something that would have delighted and horrified me in equal measure. Your cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, digital assets that exist nowhere and everywhere. The Wild West of finance, as your economists call it. Consider how perfectly my treasure map translates. The map promises immense wealth with little labour. If only you can find the X. Cryptocurrency promises immense returns with little conventional effort. If only you buy at the right moment, follow the right signal, trust the right person. It attracts the visionary, the desperate and the predator in precisely the same proportions as my treasure island attracted Trelawney, the crew, and Silver. Technology changes. The psychology does not. When someone shows you a map to easy riches, I urge you to ask one question. Who drew this map, and what do they gain when you follow it? And then there is this social media fame. Followers, likes, dopamine of engagement. You are hunting treasure, all of you. Not gold bullion, but validation. The vanity that drove Squire Trelawney. That desperate need to be seen as significant, as powerful, as the man who charted the great expedition, now drives the influencer economy. We curate our lives for an audience, hunting for the dopamine of engagement. You construct a version of yourself for public consumption, polishing and filtering, until the performance is more real than the person. My Squire Trelawney could not keep a secret, because he needed to be admired too badly. Your social media culture has built an entire economic system on that same weakness. I do not say this to condemn you. I say it because I recognize it. I was a showman too, writers always are. In my story, the black spot is a pirate's death sentence. A piece of paper thrust into your hand that marks you for elimination. You have no appeal. You have no trial. The code has judged you. In 2026, you have your own black spot. It is called the algorithm. Your account is suspended. Your content is suppressed. Your credit score is lowered. Your job application is filtered out before a human eye ever sees it. In 1880, you were marked by the pirate code, an opaque set of rules enforced by those in power, with no recourse for the condemned. In 2026, you are profiled, targeted, or excluded by opaque algorithms. The threat is invisible but fatal. At least in my day, you could see the man who handed you the black spot. Can you see the algorithm that governs your life? What then is the lesson? If I were to distill Treasure Island into a moral compass for your digital age, I would offer you 4 directions. To the north, integrity. The willingness to do what is right even when no one is watching, and the rewards of dishonesty are immediate and glittering. To the west, empathy. The capacity to understand why people become pirates, rather than simply condemning them. To the east, greed. Acknowledge it in yourself. Do not pretend it does not exist. To the south, expediency. The voice that whispers, take the shortcut. In a tech-driven world, the right course is rarely the easiest one. We must act as our own captains, steering by a moral compass even when the digital seas encourage piracy and shortcuts. Hispaniola needed a good captain. So do you. Let me tell you what Jim Hawkins truly found on that island. It was not the gold, though the gold was recovered in the end. It was him. He discovered that he was braver than he knew. He discovered that the world was more morally complex than his childhood had prepared him for. He discovered that the people you admire most can betray you, and that survival sometimes demands choices that leave permanent marks on your conscience. The gold didn't buy happiness. The experience bought wisdom. Jim Hawkins walked away from that island with something more valuable than all of Flint's loot: the knowledge of who he truly was. I believe that is the only treasure worth hunting for. And unlike buried gold, no one can take it from you. We have reached the end of our voyage together. And I leave you with the question that haunted Jim Hawkins long after he returned home. In a world of cryptocurrency and algorithms, of viral fame and digital pirates, of algorithmic bias and infinite distraction, in a world of crypto, algorithms and endless noise, what is the specific treasure you are hunting, and what price are you willing to pay for it? The map is not the territory. What is drawn on paper and what exists in reality are very different things. I learned that. Jim learned that. My sincerest hope is that you will learn it at a lower cost than we did. Thank you for sailing with me today. The sea, as always, is waiting. Choose your captain wisely.